are listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Oh yeah.
Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator for this evening, or whenever you're listening to it. This is the fourth and final segment of Geek Therapy Radio for this week. I only got a couple minutes to talk to you. And as a reminder, the show is being recorded entirely to cassette tape. How did it sound? Probably pretty good. So, as many of you know, Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6, we have not had access, or you don't have access to the original unadulterated, unaltered series, trilogy, unless you still have the original tapes, cassette tapes from the late 70s and early 80s. That's the last time that you'd have been able to watch unmolested original Star Wars films. Because, as we all know, when George Lucas re-released Star Wars into theaters in the late 90s or whatever, he added all sorts of stupid CGI and stupid scenes to it, and just, why? Why? He molested the trilogy, adding all this extra stupid stuff to it. I'm not even talking about Jar Jar Binks in episode 1, because that doesn't enter into this conversation. Anyways, for the original trilogy, unless you still have the original VHS tapes from the late 70s and early 80s, every version of the trilogy, of the original trilogy released since then, has been gussied up and made worse by the stupid CGI that they added to it. It's just dumb. But that all may change, because Disney is talking to Fox about acquiring all the assets for Star Wars. So that means it is conceivable in the near future, we're hoping for the new Blu-ray release of the Star Wars trilogy. Hopefully contained in there will be a Blu-ray release of the original unedited film version of the original Star Wars trilogy. That will be amazing. Like I said, I am not huge into Star Wars. I like Star Wars. Watching Star Wars, the original episode 4, 5, and 6 brings back memories. I think Star Wars was more my older brother's memory, even though they weren't super into Star Wars. We still had Star Wars toys and all that kind of stuff. My 95-year-old my 95-year-old grandmother remembers going to see Star Wars in the theaters. So in the late 70s, she was still young, but you know, she maybe wasn't the demographic you'd think of to go watch Star Wars films, but she remembers going to the theaters in the late 70s, early 80s to go watch Star Wars. She remembers it. So there is a chance here that if Disney acquires all the assets of Star Wars from Fox, then we might get a Blu-ray release of the unmolested, unaltered, original Star Wars trilogy, and I will go to the store and I will pay $50 or whatever it's going to be for that trilogy. I still need to pick up the Back to the Future trilogy on Blu-ray. I have the Back to the Future trilogy on DVD, but I don't have the Blu-rays yet. I need to go get that. Anyways, this has been Geek Therapy Radio for this week. Thank you for joining me. I'm Johnny Hamburger. Go like Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook. Go follow Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram, and also follow Geek Therapy on Twitter, which it's not Geek Therapy on Twitter. It's Geek Therapy KPRC on Twitter. So at Geek Therapy KPRC on Twitter. Now that's 280 characters. I might start using it more. But also go to the YouTube. When I say the YouTube, I mean the YouTube channel, Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube. Just type into YouTube, Geek Therapy Radio, and subscribe to the channel. You can see all sorts of cool things. Look at this cool cassette tape that I have here. This is what you're listening to the show on this week. This is all the audio you're listening to, all the music, everything. The entire show was dumped to tape, and then I uploaded that as a podcast. And I uploaded that as the on-air broadcast. So, like I said, I've been Johnny Hamburger. Thank you for joining me. And each week I get more and more new fans. So welcome to the show. I hope you're having fun, because we're all geeks about something. I want you really to start letting me know what you're a geek about. What's your geek interest? Like I said, you might be super into cars, you might be super into astronomy or drones or RC stuff, or looking through microscopes or sewing or baking. Whatever your geek thing is, whatever your geek thing happens to be, let me know. And I will mention it on the show, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about your geek thing. So thank you, my geeks. Thank you for being with me. I love all of you. Take care of yourself. Invest 10 minutes this week, 5 minutes this week in your geek thing. Invest 5 minutes this week in yourself, thinking, what do I want? What do I really want to do? And just know that you are loved, and you are worthy, and you are capable. And I love you. If you're listening right now and you're feeling alone and, a vagabond in this universe, I do love you. On a basic human level, I love you, and I think you're great. So, thank you for being a geek. Thank you for listening to me. We'll be back with more Geek Therapy Radio next week. For now, enjoy the huge backlog of podcasts. What show is this? Is this show 35? Is there something significant to the show 35? I don't know. That's all for Geek Therapy Radio this week. Thank you for joining me. See you next week, my geeks. Remember, geeks are sexy. Oh, Zelda!